Hello and welcome to the Word of the Week by English SP. Let me ask you a question. What is the difference between these two sentences? He hit the sack and he was sacked. Or what is the difference between a sack of nuts and a nut sack? We're going to answer these questions and more while we go over the word sack. So welcome to this week's Word of the Week by English SP.
The English SP Podcast.
English SP Podcast.
English is fucking awesome.
The English SP Podcast starts now.
So the word sack has been in the English language for a long time. It originally came from the Middle English, which came from the Latin saccus, which came from the Hebrew sack. So it's been around, this word, for a long time. Originally, a sack was a large bag that was made out of closely woven materials. You'll see these pictures of bags that they used in the old times for potatoes or grain or coal. These were sacks. Eventually, throughout the years, though, it came to mean just any kind of bag. So if you go to the grocery store is another way to say supermarket. And if you think about it, inside the supermarket, all those things inside the supermarket that you buy, those are called groceries. So a supermarket is also known as a grocery store. So all of those things inside the grocery store, when you buy those things and you have a bunch of items, you need to get a sack to carry these items home. We have to be careful because we cannot replace sack every time with bag or vice versa. Sometimes a bag can mean a purse or a backpack, but those are not sacks. A sack is, again, these things you get at the grocery store, these kind of temporary bags that we use to hold things, and they can't be closed sacks. They have that open top. Sometimes they have handles, sometimes they don't. But these are sacks. Another way that we use the word sack is when we're referring to a small bag full of only one thing. So, for example, if you go to the candy store, you can get a sack of jelly beans or a sack of gummy bears. If you go to the store, you can also get a sack of ice. So again, it's one bag full of one item. It's a sack of something. So those are the basic ways to use the word sack when we are referring to a bag. Of course, there are a lot of other ways to use the word sack. The first meaning that I want to get into, it kind of came into use around the 1500s, and that means to pillage. Now, if you remember those old movies where one army, like the Greek army in Troy, they run into another city and they breach the walls, they get over the walls and they destroy the buildings and they steal everything, that means to pillage, really to destroy and to steal. So when you read history books, you'll often hear about the sack of Troy or the sack of certain cities during wars. So this is to sack, to run into an area, destroy it, and steal all the things. We don't use this anymore. Not so much anyways. You will read about it in history books. Nowadays, we use the word ransack. So for example, if the police go in to search an apartment, they'll usually ransack the apartment and destroy things as they search through it. So the police ransacked the house when they searched for drugs. Or the robbers ransacked the department store when they were trying to steal some clothes. Things like that. We use the word ransack. So ransack is a very useful word, especially for parents that have young children. They come home and it looks like the living room has been ransacked because your kids destroyed it and they threw their toys everywhere. Oh my God, it's ransacked. Another way to use the word sack is when we say, I want to hit the sack. This came into the English language in about 1940s, 1950s. And to hit the sack means to go to bed. It means to go to bed because I want to sleep. So, oh man, I am tired. I'm going to hit the sack. Or I'm going to hit the sack early tonight. Or, oh wow, I got to wake up early tomorrow, so I'm going to hit the sack. I usually hit the sack around midnight. What time do you hit the sack? So it's to go to bed with the purpose of sleeping. We don't use this so much when we talk about sex, but you will hear it sometimes. How long have they been sacking up? Or did they hit the sack together? It's not used so much when talking about sex, but hit the sack is mostly for going to bed for the purpose of sleeping. I'm a little sleepy right now. I plan to hit the sack early tonight. Another way to use it is to sack someone, or to be sacked means to fire somebody or to get fired, to terminate the job. So let's say you have a job, you work there for 3 years, and then one day the boss comes in, he says, man, we don't need you here anymore. I'm sorry, but I have to let you go. You're fired. Well, you just got sacked. A couple examples, you could say, my friend was sacked last week, or my friend got sacked last week. So you can use the to be verb or get. Or if you are the boss, you could say, I had to sack an employee yesterday. So very different there, to sack somebody or to get sacked from the job. And the final meaning of the word sack is a nut sack, which is another way to say testicles or balls for a man. So I have a hairy nut sack. Or do you have a hairy nut sack? Or, oh man, you need to shave your nut sack. And sometimes you hear people just say sack. So you have to be careful. Like if you say, I'm going to hit the sack, it means go to bed. If you say, I got sacked, it means I was fired. If I say, oh, she hit my sack, it means she hit me in the balls. So these are very different meanings. But because the word is the same, it can be very confusing. So let's go over all these again very quickly. A sack is just a bag, a sack of potatoes, a sack for my groceries. To ransack comes from sack, means to pillage. But if I say somebody ransacked my apartment, it means they destroyed it and possibly stole things from there as well. If I say I want to hit the sack, that means I want to go to bed. Tonight, I want to hit the sack early. And if I say I was sacked, or he sacked somebody, or he got sacked, that means they were fired or I was fired. And lastly, if I talk about my nutsack, or if I talk about my sack as a noun, then I'm talking about my balls or my testicles. And that is the word of the week. If you have any questions, thoughts, ideas, is there something you want to hear about, go ahead and find us at EnglishSP.com, send us a message, and we'll try to get to your English questions either on the Word of the Week or on the Friday Night Podcast, or you can also check out, we're doing a new one as well now, the Music Talk Podcast with my partner in crime, DJ Krusty. Also, if you like learning, if you're enjoying this, let us know. That'd be nice. You can also buy us beers at EnglishSP.com because we like to drink beers, especially when we talk about English.